Sam Ahoy is a delightful episode of Cheers. I know every episode is delightful, but the show is amazing. This is the 12th episode of the 8th season of Cheers. This is directed, of course, by the wonderful James Burrows. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the events of the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. There are at least 2 quotes that I absolutely loved. Everything about this is just wonderful. And we start off the episode with Rebecca and Woody. Woody asks for some time off. Rebecca says that he's meant to be working 40 hours, and then she asks him to drive her to a bunch of appointments and things that are not maybe the most important things in the world. And Woody explains that he wants time off because, and I quote, "I cook and deliver meals to elderly shut-ins." And then we get a bunch of examples of other charitable things that he does, and it's a delightful way to start things off. I rather enjoyed it. Sam then walks in, dressed very smartly. Carla is wearing some delightful watering can earrings, and we learn that he'd been to a meeting to buy Cheers back, or to discuss buying the bar back, and they're going to sell it to him. But he still needs more money, and he needs some investors. And he shows them how much he needs on a piece of paper. This is not the first time Cheers has done this with money. They did it recently with the value of the ring desk. And they didn't tell us how much it was, but it was heavily implied that it was a lot. And as Norm explains, isn't that how many miles it is to the sun? So he still needs quite a bit of money. And they start talking about investing, and then Rebecca comes in with Colcord, and she's wearing a hat, and she looks fabulous. There are a lot of people there who are acting as Robin's security because, as Rebecca proudly explains, people want to kill him. She's obviously happy, I guess, people want to kill him because it means he's important. And then she also explains that's Cliff. People want to kill him too, which I had a lot of fun with. And it turns out that coincidentally, Robin's boat is called Rebecca. He named his sailboat long before Rebecca came into his life. She was named after the biblical Rebecca. And it turns out that Rebecca was named after her aunt, who was named after the biblical Rebecca. There are a lot of jokes in this about Rebecca and about her being fast and having barnacles on her butt. And Rebecca kept having to pay Carla off for her to not say anything. And it turns out Robin's actually going to be sailing Rebecca, the boat, in the Cape Cod Regatta. And there was an interesting moment here because Cliff's reading the paper. He points out that there's a $10,000 prize for the winner. And Robin said, in the time it takes me to say $10,000, I earn $10,000. And that's quite unusual because Robin, while he flaunts his cash in the sense that he's quite happy to just throw money at any problem, he never really boasts about it. So he's very open about it, but he never comes across as cocky or full of himself and thinking that he is important, but thinking that his money makes him better than everybody else. But when he said that, there was something uneasy about that. And I don't know if maybe the cracks are starting to show, but it's not usually the kind of attitude we get from Robin. And it turns out something's come up. He isn't able to race. So Carla suggests to Sam that Sam asks Robin if he can sail the boat. Obviously, Sam could do with $10,000 to go towards buying back Cheers. And Sam imagines what the conversation's going to be like, and he storms towards the office where Robin's making a call. And Robin comes out and suggests it first, which I liked. I thought that was a really good idea to make Robin the one suggesting it to Sam. And Sam's kind of still on a high from this conversation he was imagining. And he says to Robin, I happen to be a very good sailor, and I'm not a yacht. And Robin just responds, good for you, which I liked. And then, up until this point, the jokes about the name Rebecca I found funny. But when he was leaving, and he said, you'll need a crew, Rebecca takes 3 men. I kind of lost it at that point. Her reaction was brilliant. Carla was fabulous. Really, really good fun. And Sam, needing a crew, encourages Norm to be part of the crew. Norm's not interested until he learns there'll be a cooler of beer. Carla was quite happy to join, and Cliff then goes off to make a bet. And they then persuade Frasier to give them his $500, which is supposed to be for Freddie's future. And then if they pay $500, they'll get a 5-to-1 odds on the bet. And Frasier runs, but then immediately it cuts to him on the phone telling Lilith she didn't give him the money, pretending that he never had this $500 and she must have just imagined giving him it, which is not something you want to do. And when he hangs up, he'd been suggesting maybe it's on your dresser, maybe it's in this place, and he hangs up and says to nobody, maybe it's in your web. which is not something you want to say about your wife. I found it very funny, but also Frasier was the one in the wrong about this, so he didn't really have a reason to insult Lilith here, so not a good look for Frasier. We then cut to the boat, and it looks great. Sam is really enthusiastic about this. Carla and Norm are just really chill, enjoying it all. Carla's wearing some sailboat earrings, which I absolutely love. I'd love to know where all of her earrings are now. I can't say for certain that she wears a different pair every episode, or even multiple pairs every episode. That would be such a fun project, to take screenshots of every single pair of earrings Carla owns. That is something I'm going to write down and do at some point. But I'd love to know what happened with them. And Norm goes into the fridge to get some beer, and he asks, why would Colcord keep a digital clock in his refrigerator? It's a bomb. I don't think, granted at the beginning of the episode, we were informed that people want to kill him, so maybe it's not the biggest stretch, but I don't think anybody really would have guessed that that's where the episode was going. And I'd seen the episode before, of course I could remember what happened, at least loosely could remember. I really strongly don't think I would have guessed that that's what was going to happen. And Sam calls the Coast Guard and says, Mayday, Mayday. Of course he does, but he is Sam Mayday Malone, which I just thought was a really nice touch. And they realise they're going to have to abandon ship, so they go off. Carla points out there are sharks. Norm scurries back in saying, abandon water, which I love. But what I don't love is that I learned there are sharks at Cape Cod. Cape Cod is very high on my list of places I want to visit next. It doesn't turn me away from the idea, but I didn't know there were sharks. And I have been watching a lot of shark-based horror films recently, so I'm a little more nervous about that than I was. And then ultimately, Norm grabs some beer from the fridge and they run, and they end up running and they go onto the beach, and we don't see the beach, but they cut to the bar where they're telling this story of how they ran onto the beach and in the background the boat exploded. Obviously that would have been absolutely terrifying. We also learned that the reason Cliff started to grow a moustache is because there was an incident with his mother's crock pot, and then Frasier leaves, saying that he's staying at the Sheraton for a couple of weeks, obviously because he can't go home and tell Lilith that he gave them $500 for a bet. And I did some Googling just because I really like this kind of information, and assuming it's the same place, which it definitely will be, the Sheraton is an 8-minute car ride or 30 minutes by foot from the real Cheers. It's just down from Beacon Street on Dalton Street, and it was built in the 1930s. So if you're ever in Boston and you walk past it, that's where Frasier was staying for a few weeks. And Robin then comes in. It's just Sam, Carla, and Norm at this point. Robin comes in with some release forms for the insurance, and Sam was great. Sam was really irritated that that's all Robin seemed to care about. And to his credit, quite quickly Robin realises the error that he made, and that he should have been more thoughtful and considerate of them and their experience, not just the money side of things. And Sam, how much do you suppose your life is worth? And he offers him $50,000 plus $10,000 in stock options, and Sam doesn't jump at the money. And he gives this great speech about the value of human life and dignity, and he just wants a little apology and some concern. And Robin asks how they are, and they say they're fine. And Robin leaves, which is ridiculous because Sam has just thrown away a good chunk of money that could have helped him buy the bar back. So I think it would have been more sensible for him to demand an apology and concern, and also the money. Well, not demand the money, but accept the money, demand the apology. But I'm glad he didn't, because it gave us a fabulous moment. Robin leaves, and Carla and Norm realise that Robin's technically just walked off with $60,000 he was going to give to Sam, and obviously that would have been $20,000 each. Well, roughly, once you include the stock. And Norm and Carla stand up and run out shouting, abandon Sammy, abandon Sammy. Which I absolutely loved, and it was just a fabulous way to end things, and quite a nice light-hearted way, of course, because that scene was a little bit heavy. They basically just had this near-death experience. It really sounded like they were minutes away from death and blowing up on that ship, and that would have been terrifying. And it's an amazing episode. I loved every aspect of it. Do I have any personal highlights? all of it, but I'd have to say the jokes about Rebecca the sailboat and Rebecca the human. A lot of the abandoned water, abandoned Sammy, I loved so much. Norm and Carla on the boat, absolutely fabulous. It's just great. I love all of it, which is not unusual because most Cheers episodes are as perfect as can be. And I'm pleased to say that Sam Ahoy is an absolute joy.